All right, looks like the stream is active, Maricote, if you'd like to start when you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order our Mayor's Council meeting. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting today on the traditional and unceded territory of the Halkamilam, Squamish, and Semi-Amu speaking people. These refer to the language groups of the Indigenous people whose lands in which TransLink operates there. So, Carol, I just want to confirm you've been able to take attendance for our meeting this morning?
Yes, Chair Cote.
Okay, and I believe the live stream is working. So I'm going to look to adopt the agenda. We do not have any public delegates this morning, so we can remove that from the agenda. And with that one change, if I can get a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed and carried. And moving on to the approval of our minutes from June 24th. If everything's good with the minutes, I'll look for a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, we're now on to item 3.1 of our agenda, and I'd like to welcome our new CEO, Kevin Quinn, to his first public Mayor's Council meeting. I know we've all had a chance to meet him through a workshop session last week, and he's a solid 6 days into his new job now, I believe. So welcome, Kevin, and I will pass the floor on to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chair Cote. And so good morning, everyone. It's an absolute honor to be here today for my first Mayor's Council meeting. And before I get started, I'd just like to share a little bit about myself, including some experience, some approach I bring to the role, and some overarching kind of objectives and goals. I also want to give some quick updates on a few recent announcements. So as mentioned, I'm Kevin Quinn. I come to Metro Vancouver from Baltimore, where I was the CEO of the Maryland Transit Administration. And as you may know, the MTA is one of the largest multimodal systems in the United States, and in many ways has a lot of similarities to our transit network here in Metro Vancouver. And that was one of the key factors that really attracted me to this role. I'm really passionate about leading transportation organizations, especially those that deliver an array of mobility options to their customers, including bus, rail, commuter rail, passenger-only ferry, and accessible transit services. Another big factor that drew me to this role was TransLink's reputation in the industry and throughout North America. TransLink really is regarded as a first-class transit authority with a system that's known for rapid ridership growth, for smart investments, and a real leading example of how transit can help a region really thrive. So needless to say, I'm very excited, very humbled to be sitting here today and to be embarking on this new chapter of my career along with my family. When TransLink's board of directors hired me, they outlined several key priorities, including focusing on TransLink's post-pandemic recovery with a real emphasis on rebuilding ridership, achieving financial stability, and also continuing to deliver a reliable and thriving transportation system. I'll also be focusing a lot on employee engagement communication, continuing our efforts to improve and enhance the customer experience and furthering engagement with our customers and our stakeholders. And I've been diving in, as noted, with some of our workshop sessions and really eager to guide and lead our team through the development of TransLink's next investment plan, a roadmap that's going to return us to long-term financial sustainability and will lay the groundwork for us to deliver a new vision and really continue the hard work of improving and expanding transportation options in the region. I want to note that just throughout my career as a public servant, I've really adhered to a set of values that guide my work, including transparency, openness, communication, and accountability. I really believe that a transit agency can't operate in a silo, and to best serve Metro Vancouver and to make smart decisions about transit service and investments, I think it's so important that we have a deep understanding of the people who rely on us every single day. So in my first 100 days, certainly my goal is to meet with all the mayors in your municipalities to really listen, learn about your communities, and how we can improve transportation options for your constituents. I'm also committed to meeting with our community partners, stakeholder groups, and business organizations. My guiding philosophy that you'll hear me talk a lot about is that I believe transit is really all about building and maintaining relationships. I think how an organization treats its employees is really reflected in how its employees engage with our customers. And that's why I've already begun to meet with employees to understand their perspectives on how the system is delivering for customers and for our region. Over the last week, I've had the great opportunity to be out and about, meet with frontline employees at SkyTrain and at the Hamilton, Vancouver, Burnaby, and Surrey transit centers. And I'll be visiting all the other transit centers in the coming weeks and months. I also held a virtual meet and greet with hundreds of our corporate employees. I'm really looking forward to meeting with them in person once they return to the office. And I'm also very looking forward to getting out in the community, begin meeting with riders, hear their ideas of how we can serve them better. As you may know, we recently launched an online customer experience ideas board on the TransLink website, where the public can share ideas and priorities for improving the day-to-day transit experience. And in just 2 weeks, we've already received more than 200 submissions, including some very creative ideas, which I'd encourage you to check out at translink.com/ideas. If there's one thing I just want you to take away from these remarks, it's that I very wholeheartedly believe in the importance of collaboration. And I think we have the potential to create one of the world's greatest transit systems, but to achieve that bold goal, it's going to require that we work together in pursuit of a common vision. One of the things that excites me so much about this new role is that TransLink's operating model is really built upon this foundation of collaboration. It's very much coded into this organization's DNA. And the very existence of this mayor's council, which brings together representatives from 23 distinct communities to talk about transportation planning, is a testament to Metro Vancouver's commitment to very big picture, very regional thinking. And I look forward to working with all of you. Before I wrap up my remarks, I just want to share a quick recap of a few highlights that have taken place since the last Mayor's Council meeting. First, on July 9th, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was in Surrey to announce that the federal government will provide $1.3 billion towards a full 16-kilometer extension of the Expo line from Surrey to Langley City Centre. This is in addition to the provincial government's funding contribution, which combined will help us expand rapid transit along the Fraser Highway corridor. This project will connect residents of the Surrey Metro Centre, Fleetwood Town Centre, and Langley Regional City Centre to more housing, employment, schools, and services. And on its completion, the Surrey-Langley SkyTrain extension will provide the capacity to move 6,800 passengers per hour per direction, while reducing travel times and getting more people on transit. On July 22nd, I was honored to be in attendance for a very special ceremony at the waterfront station to celebrate the historic maiden voyage of the Burrard Chinook Sea Bus. And as a newcomer to this region, I was just so deeply moved by the ceremony, which included traditional songs and blessings from the 3 First Nations at such an important time in Canada's national discourse around reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. It was a very powerful experience and one that I'll certainly cherish for many years to come. It was great to be there with Mayor's Council Chair Cote, Mayor Mike Little, and Mayor Marianne Booth. We worked proudly alongside members of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations to adorn the Chinook with artwork that honors local Indigenous history and culture. And I personally look forward to future collaborations as we continue our journey toward reconciliation. I'd also like to note that this coming Saturday, July 31st, TransLink will be starting construction to replace aging expansion joints along the SkyTrain tracks of the Sky Bridge, which serves as a key connection for Expo Line service between New Westminster and Surrey. And the expansion joints on the bridge, they haven't been replaced since their construction. They've reached the end of their useful lives. And this investment, which is part of TransLink's maintenance and upgrade program, is really essential to keeping our assets in a state of good repair, and will keep trains moving safely and smoothly for customers for years to come. Work is planned over 2 7-day periods from July 31st to August 7th, and also August 14th to August 21st. And during those times, we'll be single tracking between the Scott Road Station and Columbia Station. We're going to keep customers moving as quickly as possible between stations. We'll have trains crossing 2 at a time in each direction, providing 15-minute service during peak periods. And at other times, 1 train will cross in each direction, providing 12-minute service. And of course, we'll have SkyTrain staff out there on site to assist customers at the affected stations in Surrey and New Westminster and to monitor service levels. Finally, I just want to provide a quick update on ridership. Since the last Mayor's Council meeting, we launched our new Reconnect campaign aimed at boosting transit ridership and welcoming riders back to our system. As part of this campaign, TransLink is partnering with Destination Vancouver to offer discounts at hundreds of local sightseeing tours, attractions, and activities. And I'm really pleased to report that ridership is really showing signs of increased recovery since mid-June. This trend is really evident on all modes and on both weekdays and weekends. The week of July 12th was actually the highest week of ridership since the start of the pandemic nearly 18 months ago. For that week, total system-wide boardings were at 48.2% of pre-COVID ridership levels. As you can imagine, this jump in ridership is very welcome news and certainly a move in the right direction. Since summer of 2020, our ridership levels had really plateaued at about 40% of pre-COVID levels. So we're so pleased to see more customers returning to the system this summer. And we certainly expect to see ridership continue to increase in the weeks ahead as more of the provincial health officers' restrictions are lifted and we move into the fourth and final step of BC's restart plan. With that, thank you so much. Really happy to be here, and I'm pleased to take any questions that you may have. Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Kevin, for your first CEO report, and welcome again to the Mayor's Council and your new role. We're really excited to be working with you. I think just on the last point there, I think it is encouraging to see some life starting to come back and ridership increase on the transit. I was recently taking the SkyTrain and I didn't get a seat for the first time in probably well over a year and a half.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to take that as a positive sign for our system, and I think we know we still have a long way to go, and we need to make sure people feel comfortable and safe on our system. But we do need to get our riders back. It's critically important to our transportation system and our public transit system. So welcome to the TransLink family, and it sounds like you're very quickly becoming well versed in all of the work that we're engaging in. We'll give an opportunity if there's any other Mayor's Council members that have any questions or comments regarding the CEO report. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands, so if I can get just a motion to receive the report.
So moved.
It's been moved.
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it's carried. Okay, we're going to move on to 3.2 on the agenda, which is a report on the Transport 2050 Phase 2 public engagement. And I believe I'm passing this off to Jeff to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair Cote. Today we are announcing that we have released the formal engagement summary report. It's now posted on our website from the Phase 2 engagement period that we ran on Transport 2050, obviously a critical step in the development of this long-range strategy. We've been giving you some high-level findings to help inform the continued development of both the policy and the networks, but we wanted to highlight some of the things that we heard during that period and make sure that the public is aware of the key findings and where you can find additional information, as well as some of the more detailed demographic information that was collected during this period. Next slide, Mike. So I'll move through quite quickly just to give you a summary. I know you've seen some of the themes, but we did want to take this opportunity to highlight some of the nuance that we received during the process. As you're all aware, we are aiming to finish the strategy by the end of this year, probably looking for adoption in early 2022, January or February. The final phase of engagement will be on the full draft strategy, which will start this fall. Will include obviously public engagement as well as engagement with municipal councils. We'll do some collaborations as well with Metro Vancouver as they reach out to municipal councils on Metro 2050. Way back in May of 2019 through September, we ran the first round of engagement on this, our largest engagement ever, really to hear what was important to people. We had a lot of primers on some of the transformational dynamics that are at play in this field at this point, and we wanted to really understand what people thought about that, what their ideas were for the strategy and the vision and the ideas. So really the phase 2, given some of the pause because of COVID, and as a step before getting to that full strategy, we really wanted to make sure that we were translating what we heard during that phase 1 engagement from the public and stakeholders into the right goals and the key actions. Next slide, Mike. So as you've seen, we went out and we talked about the goals and actions. There are 5 goals and 3 actions. The intention of this phase 2 engagement was not to go as broad as we did in the first phase, but was really to make sure that we have heard deeply from a lot of voices that reflect the population breakdown across this region, and that we were getting high quality input that would help you and the board shape the actual strategy. So we wanted to make sure that we went out and talked to traditionally underrepresented voices, whether those be youth, Indigenous residents, or equity-seeking groups, as well as the normal public and advocates and enthusiasts that always participate. Next slide. So what we did is, as you've seen, we asked if we were on the right track. We were talking about this as a pulse check. So that was the general approach for all those goals and those 3 transformative actions. You can see that we broke it down in this particular scale. We did the engagement through a survey, as well as we then checked that against a representative poll across the region. And thankfully, the results were very similar, which gives us faith that the engagement survey results are fairly reflective of the population as a whole. So you can see in general the breakdown between on the right track or neutral, or if we were off track. The next slide gives us a bit of a summary on that. We really feel on those goals and objectives, how we translated what the themes were for this, for Metro Vancouver residents to the goals. It seems like we are well on the right path in this regard. And now we have breakdowns by different demographics, by different geographies across the region, and the support across those different groups was very strong. As mayors and municipalities, you can take a look at the more detailed reports at your leisure and see how that breaks out by your community. Next slide. So the first of those transformative actions was really around creating people-first streets for walking, cycling, and rolling, which does involve reallocating in many cases right-of-way. As you recall, when we did this engagement, we wanted to make sure that if it was to be high quality, that people saw what the trade-offs were. So we had primers for each one of these 3 actions, so people could take a look at it and then provide this on a scale. Do they support it, somewhat support it, are they neutral, or do they oppose it, or they don't know? And so you can see of the people that participated by the survey, they had stronger opinions maybe, but there was still, even by the market research, very strong support for this. Next slide. One of the things that we got, and I think we've been building into our advice to you on how to develop the strategy, was, while there seems to be very good alignment across the region for this objective, there are some concerns about how it's implemented, what the metrics and the approach and the sequencing is. There are concerns for both the goods movement sector to make sure that when we're doing this and reallocating, it's not at the expense of being able to move people and goods and adding to costs. There's concerns from people in the accessibility community that may have physical mobility challenges, that this does not come at the expense of their access to critical services and businesses. And obviously parking and business support was a critical thing. But we did see a lot of support for this, which is true to the actions that we're seeing many of your municipalities undertake during COVID. Next slide. The next piece was really on those networks. If you recall, we showed 2 bookend networks, one that was much more focused on grade separation, a higher amount of SkyTrain typically, as well as the interregional, and then one that was much more surface-based in its approach and a higher reliance on bus rapid transit or light rail transit, which we do not have a history of using in this region. So you asked us to go out there and see where people are. You can see there was quite a bit breakdown between the 2 networks. We wanted to make sure also that people had an opportunity to tell us if they didn't like either of these or they didn't know. And you can see that there was a small percentage of people, somewhere between 3 and 5%, that didn't like either network. They were also given the opportunity to provide comments so that we can go through those and see why they didn't like them. Next slide gives us some of the summary of that. There was a slightly more support for Network B, which had more corridors, more that were road-based, surface-based approach than the heavier reliance on SkyTrain that was in Network A, but they were very similar. But it was nice to see that, in light of that point that I raised earlier, that we don't have a lot of experience within this region of using fully dedicated surface right of way, that there was strong support for that and the reasons why. Next slide. The final action was on automated vehicles. This one was much more split. You can see that by the engagement and the poll results, where there was a broad spectrum of input from support to somewhat to quite a bit of opposition. We were asking about to the degree that we should be managing the introduction of automated vehicles. Which, as you recall, during the scenario development that we did way back about 1.5 years ago with Metro Vancouver and you, in most of our scenarios, we believe there will be a high degree of automation by 2050. And so it's really how do we go out there and manage that introduction. Next slide, Mike. This was one that we saw that was kind of most challenging, I think, for people, partly because it's a bigger leap than anything that we're doing, but we heard a lot of concerns about the introduction of automated vehicles, what that would do for safety. There was a real desire to see that leveraged safety and accessibility, but there was quite a bit of concern about the congestion that may have, about the equity issues. If you recall, we asked several questions about our ability to use different measures, policy measures, whether those be pricing or fees, to try and deter empty vehicles from cruising around our streets, or curb management. There was generally support for that, but it declined the more that we relied on fees going forward. So we've been infusing that into our advice to you for the full strategy. So that's the completion of the full report. It really sets us up for a robust fall discussion, which we also see me being a little bit broader than this phase 2, but still really deep. It's going to be a fairly extensive document. You've seen some of the drafts. So we know that continuing to engage with those populations like youth, our Indigenous Advisory Committee, equity seeking groups is going to be critical for moving the dial on this. But it is now online, and if you have any questions, I'm here, or Steve Vanagas, our VP of Public Affairs. We can try and answer anything right now. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Jeff, and thank you to the entire team that's been working so hard on Transport 2050. Obviously, we're hitting some big milestones and hoping to complete the work through the fall and do another big round of engagement there. But we are certainly obviously moving closer to completed Transport 2050. I'll open it up to any members of the Mayor's Council if there's any questions or comments regarding this, and if not, we'll move to the recommendations in the report. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands, but there are recommendations on page 6 of the report. I'll look to the council if they'd like to start.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our public meeting. So our next meeting is not until September 30th. And maybe I'll look for a motion to adjourn our public meeting, and we'll resume back with our in-camera meeting at 9:30. If I can get a motion to adjourn this.
Moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried, and we'll return back at 9:30.